Mr. Griffin, Subcommittee on Europe and Eurasia Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Wallace, great to have you here today. I've known you for a long time and appreciate your testimony. I have a few questions about Iran. I want to explore a little bit about what my colleague was just discussing. With regard to the sanctions that have been implemented, it seems that Iran has tried to mitigate the sanctions and mitigate the impact of the sanctions by trying to accomplish some things through the UN, such as membership, as we just heard on the Human Rights Council. Can you comment generally about Iran and its work within the UN, and maybe other examples of it trying to leverage its position in the UN to mitigate some of the international sanctions and problems that it has had?
Thank you for the question. It's great to see you up there, Congressman. I think that it's important in discussing exactly what membership in the UN means. Why should a sanctioned UN member country like Iran or North Korea, why should they be allowed to run for leadership positions in the UN when they are defying the very rules that ostensibly of the membership organization? I mean, Iran, North Korea, others are subject to rigorous sanctions and are defying those sanctions. And I think that it would be a reasonable thing to assert that if you were defying the rules, if I were defying the rules of this committee, I'm sure I would not be allowed to testify before this committee. I think that's a reasonable thing to assert. Sanctions are like a game of whack-a-mole. The targeted sanctions are the best sanctions. When they're targeted on individuals or on specific areas, they're the best. When in the wake of the Comprehensive Iran Sanctions Act, focusing on refined petroleum, Iran moved the cheese. They tried to enhance their refined petroleum capacity. I think that the goal that we must take in Iran sanctions, whether it be at the UN or in this Congress, is to try to find a mechanism to make it such that any company and companies that do business in Iran are treated as pariahs as a pariah regime. And I think you've seen that happen because of the great work of this body, members on both sides of the aisle who have done great things in legislation. The work at the UN, sanctions resolutions in the Security Council have been very, very valuable in that regard. The European Union has passed sanctions rules. We can do much more. And as I mentioned previously with Congressman Deutsch and others who are supporting legislation to make it so that any company that is doing business in Iran has to come clean. For too long, when we started United Against Nuclear Iran 3 years ago, we were really troubled because there was no place to go to find the list of companies and entities that were doing business in Iran. We've tried to compile that list. With your help, we can make it be so that any company, wherever they're based around the world, if they avail themselves of the U.S. capital markets, that they have to disclose in their regulatory filings whether or not they're in Iran. That will be precise information that our diplomats at the UN, our diplomats in the European Union can then take and focus that sanction work on that information that's disclosed in our regulatory filings. And I know that this committee and various members on both sides of the aisle are very much focused in that area. One thing on the Human Rights Council, there are only two options. The United States lends its imprimatur to a UN body that's bad, or we try to go in and make it better. That's a thoughtful debate. I disagree with my colleague respectfully on this. The Bush administration didn't want to lend its imprimatur to the Human Rights Council because they thought it was fundamentally flawed. The Obama administration has said that it wanted to engage and show leadership. I believe that they have shown leadership. They are doing a good job of making sure that the Human Rights Council functions sort of in a way that it should, but I don't know if it's affecting human rights around the world. I know it's affecting human rights on the Human Rights Council, but I don't know if it's doing anything else around the world. And I think that there's a real question of a difficult decision. The Durban Review Conference on Racism. The Bush administration took the position that we should not fund it and we should not support it. The Obama administration ended up walking out and leaving that conference, leaving it. That was abandoning the field under that analysis. I think both sides are actually reasonable positions, and they're difficult things. The question is, do you lend your imprimatur of the great power of the United States, the one hegemon in the world and the one that we are all so devoted to, or do you go in and try to reform it in the inside? And the case is the Bush administration, the Obama administration have done both, on both sides.
Thank you very much. Mr. Carnahan?